Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our 2016 Local Candidates Forum. My name is Raul Altamirano. I am the current secretary for the Javelina Press Club. Thank you all for coming. And just wanted to, before we start, just go ahead and say, we just wanted to go ahead and say from the Javelina Press Club ourselves, from the Javelina Broadcast Network, who is actually running this event right now, shooting it on camera, and to the Texas A&M University-Kingsville Student Government Association. We just want to go ahead and thank you all for coming. We'd also like to give a shout out to all of the students who have helped organize this event. And we'd also like to give a very special shout out to the Kingsville Record, including Mr. Chris Mayer, who is here in attendance, for helping us promote this event and co-hosting it. And just letting everybody know that this event was going on, taking place here at Texas A&M University-Kingsville, and bringing the community together for what it certainly feels like one of the most important campaigns that we've ever had in this country. So I want to thank you all for coming. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up today's moderator. He is the current he's from the Kingsville Record, the managing editor, Mr. Tim Acosta.
Hi. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming. We're very excited to have you guys here. This is actually the first time that our newspaper has done an event like this, and we weren't sure what the turnout was going to be, so we're really pleased with the turnout tonight. We're glad to have you all here with us for a very important discussion. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our candidates. Just to let you know, you're welcome to applaud and cheer for them as they come out and when the forum's over, but we ask that you keep your applause to a minimum during the actual discussion itself. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our candidates tonight. Without further ado, we have Representative J.M. Lozano, Republican, for the District 43 State Representative Office. And his opponent, Democratic challenger, Marisa Yvette Garcia-Utley. Well, thank you both for being here tonight. Obviously, I know it's a very busy time of year with campaigns in full swing, and we're a month out from the election, so thank you for giving the time to be here with us tonight and have this discussion. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys about a couple minutes to introduce yourselves to the audience. Ms. Garcia-Utley, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience,
Sure.
Go right ahead.
Well, my name is Marisa Yvette Garcia-Utley. I was born in Alice, Texas, Jim Wells County, and raised in Ben Bolt on the ranch. Both parents, school teachers, and had a sibling, Dr. Clarissa Isela Garcia. Father was a county commissioner for 24 years, and I really enjoyed being part of that. And now as an adult, I am a business owner. I have 3 children, 23-year-old son, Javier Miguel Guerra, my daughter, 13, Julie Ileana Utley, and my 12-year-old, John William Utley. I am engaged to Judge Pedro P. Trevino, and I am very excited to be running this race. It has been a long 9 months, and we're winding down to the almost last 30 days of it. But as I have gone through this journey of this campaign, I've enjoyed every day of it. Of course, you know, as Representative Lozano would feel, we both want the win. We both want to come out with a victory. But it's the process of getting there to November 8th. I've enjoyed every day speaking to constituents throughout my district, meeting people in every county, getting to know their needs, their issues, and really getting to know what it is that they want a voice for in Austin, not necessarily the other way around. I have started this race with very limited funds, and I continue to do that. I think my biggest contribution was probably about $3,000 thus far. This race has been run purely on energy, stamina, willpower, and just wanting to fight for the constituents of this district. I have not promised anyone anything. I have not been given a contribution from any special interest group to have me vote any which way come the 85th legislative session. And I am proud to say that I am willing to do what it takes to be your next state representative. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Representative Lozano, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, it's working. I'm used to holding a microphone. You guys are very advanced. But thank you to the Kingsville Record, the university, the Press Club, which is journalism and communication majors, for the city of Kingsville for putting on this event. I'm honored to be here with my wife Abby today, our daughter Penelope, our son, excuse me, it's hard to talk about my kids. My entire family, my 3 sisters, my son, my dad, my mom. This began for me 25 years ago. And I know when you look at me, you're like, what were you, like 11? I was. I was an odd child. I was in the library in Fremont High School, elementary and middle school, checking out books on the economy, on our state government. I was watching C-SPAN. I don't know why, but I just liked watching it. And I remember seeing Oliver North, thinking he was a G.I. Joe on C-SPAN. For some reason, government service has always been a calling to me. And I've worked towards that. And I was blessed to be raised in a great community, I think, of Fremont. And when you really think about it, to go from a small town like Fremont to the Texas capital, it's quite a feat in itself. It took a lot of hard work, to be honest, and I did it at the age of 29. But all that passion and dedication wouldn't have been possible if I didn't have a strong support network. My parents, my sisters, my wife, and our kids today. And I've been blessed, just like my father has been blessed, by Jim Wells County, Brooks County, Jim Hogg County, Duval County, with an ongoing successful medical practice. These counties, Jim Wells, Clayburgh, San Patricio, B, even Oasis, has blessed my wife and I with successful businesses with almost 45 employees. And every session, the people of this district have returned me to Austin with more and more votes each time, and more cross over votes. I'll give you an example. Governor Abbott ran 2 years ago in Jim Wells, and he got 44% of the vote. In Jim Wells County, no Republican had ever won. That's Box 13, LBJ, Duke of Duval. You all know the story. We got 58% of the vote in Jim Wells County. And I'm confident we're going to do that, if not more. Because the people now are voting the person. More and more people doing that ensures that the public representatives that you have are held accountable. They're not getting your vote by default. You're actually going to see what they've done. And in the last 6 years, I've written over 114 substantive bills that I've introduced, 11 of which are now law, 13 Senate bills that I carried through the House process. And so that's 24 laws that are signed by the governor that we have been able to get on the books for you. We've been able to get $65 million for A&M Kingsville to build a new music building. We were able to save Fremont ISD from closure 3 times. We've succeeded in getting increased funds for schools by $4.2 billion. That's been a hard fight in itself. And we were able to get $800 million for the TRS care, retired teacher care system. The fight continues, and I need you to send me back, and it's an honor to be here with you today, and I'm just humbled to have this opportunity to be with you.
Thank you, Representative. Okay, well, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and even though it seems like a lot of time, we really don't. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. I really would like to go ahead and start the discussion with something that I know a lot of people are familiar with. We obviously, as a region, benefit from benefited from the Eagle Ford boom. I mean, I think there were a lot of people, even in this room, who know somebody who worked in the oil field and made good money. Do you guys think that the state of Texas is overly reliant on the Eagle Ford shale for its economic and maybe jobs growth?
You know, the Texas economy, going into the legislature, we all think of Texas, and when I go to other states and I meet people, they always ask, do you have a horse, and are you in the oil and gas industry? Do you drink oil for breakfast? I mean, that's the mentality. And I was shocked to learn when I got into the legislature that fewer than 20% of the state's economy is from oil and gas revenue. Texas is a very diversified economy, very strong. We don't have a state income tax. Other states do. And as consequently, when there was a recession nationwide, Texas weathered that storm. Our real estate prices stayed relatively constant when other states had Nevada, California, and Florida housing crisis. And so we're not as reliant as it might seem from the outside, to be honest, and that's why our economy has been strong. On a microcosm, some counties are more reliant on oil and gas, like Jim Wells County, Clayburgh County as well. When ad valorem taxes are down 30-40%, the county's coffers dwindle. And so counties have to make the right decisions to reduce expenditures. Some counties don't. Some counties are way too late to react. And here in Clayburgh County, they've done an incredible job to bring a shortfall down to almost nothing. And you're talking millions of dollars of shortfall. And so there's a lot to be said for leaders that can make those tough decisions. Texas will weather this storm. The oil prices are creeping back up. I remember being at a conference on oil and gas, and I asked this professor offline, what's the floor of the oil price? Is it going to go below 30? You know, actually, is it going to go below 35? He said, it's 30. Whatever. Every expert will say a different thing. Well, sure enough, it pretty much was 30. And so I'm confident it's getting back up to 45. The sweet spot, if you're at $100 a barrel of oil, you're paying $5 for gasoline. So you don't want that either. So there's a sweet spot, and it's about $45 to $55 a barrel where drilling continues. We also have a lot of natural gas here. And so as the price of natural gas goes up, there will be more drilling in this area versus just drilling for liquids further up north in the Guford Shale.
Thank you, Representative.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Garcia-Utley, what are your thoughts on whether the state of Texas is overly reliant on oil and natural gas?
Well, I'll have to agree with Mr. Lozano. I mean, Jim Wells County, which is home to me, has been hit very hard with the fall of Eagle Ford Shale. You know, being engaged to the county judge, I know that he had a very tough budget this last month, and you know, he had to cut a little over $3 million off his budget, and that just really hurt us. We lost employees, lost different funding, so it hurts us, yes, in Jim Wells, but I think as a whole, as you know, as our district, it is something that we've come to rely on pretty heavily. And we're learning, you know, that's why everyone throws around diversifying the economy, because I think people have gotten pretty comfortable with relying on that up and down, the coming and going of the oil and gas production and cost. And so I know Jim Wells County is coming up with more of a strategic plan, and their EDC is working hard. I know San Patricio is doing the same thing, and now, you know, it's import and export through the Port of Corpus Christi. Beeville, not as much so, but yet the people that live there, there's probably about 20% that, you know, were employed with the oil field are not having to travel a little further. So it's just getting these communities to open up to a different idea, different mindset of bringing in different manufacturers, maybe taking advantage of the railway that should be coming up. We're pretty centralized in our district, and so we have a lot to offer. I mean, we're between Port of Laredo and Brownsville, Corpus, and we've got San Antonio. So I think that's just going to be the projection for the next 10 years in this district. It is diversifying and not so much solely depending on the oil and gas.
And it's funny you mentioned that the the district maybe is overly reliant. The district as a whole, with some of the entities, Clayburgh County, Jim Wells, St. Pat. I do know Clayburgh County at one point this year had a $1.2 million deficit that they needed to offset, and that was brought about solely with falling mineral values. I know Jim Wells County's situation that they were in. Clayburgh County actually had a tax increase this year, but because of the size of the loss in mineral values, they still actually had a net loss in taxable revenue. So they started out with a deficit no matter what they did. What can the legislature, if anything, do for entities like Clayburgh County or even the school districts who've also seen this mineral value decrease hurt them? What can the legislature do to help ease the financial burden to these individuals?
Yeah, the question was, what can the legislature do to reduce the financial burden on school districts or counties or cities? And each one is a specific plan. With respect to school districts, in 2006, the legislature, I wasn't there, the legislature asked school districts to cut their property tax rate, and that they would make up the difference through a franchise tax and the cigarette tax. Of course, smoking is down every year, and the franchise tax, business tax, did not bring in the revenue it thought. So essentially, the state of Texas stiffed school districts. Our job in the legislature this next session is going to be to address school finance. That will reduce the burden on property tax measures for school districts, so it'll increase their revenue. School districts outside of Alamo Heights and Highland Park in Dallas and Westlake in Austin will all benefit. And so I was part of a bill last session with Chairman Aycock of Public Ed to add another $1 billion to public ed. That bill died in the House, but the reason it died is because some senators were saying, we want to wait for the Texas Supreme Court to rule on school finance. They've ruled. It was not a good ruling. It talked bad about the Texas school finance system in every way you could think of, but it was still constitutional. But they've ruled, and they've got all those criticisms of it. And so now it's incumbent upon us in the legislature to fix that. The other issue is in terms of the state helping counties. We have a tremendous amount of unfunded mandates that have been piling up for over 30, 40 years. It's not one party's fault. But they ask counties to do things by law, but they don't give them the funds to do it. And so counties are stretched thin in their ability, and it's very hard to pass a tax increase for a county. Or to make cuts. It's very difficult. It's almost the same with cities as well. My job is just to continue to help grow our economy in areas that are not as prone to shock from oil and gas. Now, the oil and gas issue primarily is a global issue. As long as Saudi Arabia, OPEC nations open that valve, they will flood our market. No matter what we do here, price of oil will drop. And so we need to get less reliant on foreign sources of oil. We also have to protect our market share of oil and gas. And so we have an LNG terminal by Cheniere Energy being built in San Patricio County. They will be exporting gas to other nations. Natural gas prices in Europe are about $13 per MCF. Here, they're about $4. And so it's a $4 shipping cost, and so there's a built-in profit for producers here in this region. And so all the natural gas that's under our ground that we're not drilling for will start to get drilled again, and that'll help revitalize our local tax base.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Garcia-Utley, what are your thoughts on what the legislature can do to assist counties and school districts who maybe are impacted by these falling mineral values?
Well, 2 points were brought up by Mr. Lozano. One was public school funding. Public school funding, as we know, Mr. Lozano did vote in 2011 when he first came into office against that $5.4 billion cut. But that is when he was first in and was on a different side of things. And as we have progressed, we continue to fall short. We continue to fall short in funding our public schools, especially our rural schools here in our district. And now with the fall of the oil field and the sales tax coming in, as well as the homestead exemption that has gone up to $25,000 from $15,000, that is even more funding that's taken away from our schools. So we need to, I feel like that is something that is something that I need to do going up there, fighting for it. I know the Corpus Christi Times endorsed Mr. Lozano, saying that was, one of the biggest things that he's done. But again, that was in 2011, 2013, 2015. The story has changed in funding for our pre-K program, for expanding our program, for having qualified teachers in this area, and minimizing the teacher-student ratio to 1 to 18 students in a classroom. At 4 years old, that's probably all a teacher can handle. We need to bring in monies to be able to fund the pre-K program. It's a fundamental program that starts the basics of a child's school years, and it is very important, especially here in the rural areas. Most kids are left, with a family member, or maybe not left in the best conditions. Opening up this pre-K and funding it would be something to look at. But as it is, we're 44th in the nation as far as our school funding here in Texas. So that means that we're underneath Oklahoma, underneath Mississippi. We're not doing very well, and that's something that we like to pride ourselves in, that Texas is the best. To me, public school funding is supposed to be at the top, and I just don't see that fight happening right now. I think we need to close that gap. I see different, bills being voted on that do nothing but cut, whether it's giving airplane owners tax breaks, voting for franchise taxes to be reduced 25%, which, that's $2.6 billion loss in revenue that could be used for our public schools. These are the things that we can't take for granted. We are in dire need for monies for our public schools. We have to continue to fight for it, and this is a very crucial time.
Thank you. Representative, any response?
Yeah. First, I want to say that I will always vote against cuts to our schools. Now, 2011, if you send me back 10 years from now, I will always vote against cuts to our schools. Education funding is the greatest multiplier in terms of an investment. For every dollar you invest in public education, the state gets back $7 to $10 in the future. That's a great investment. And so it doesn't make sense to cut schools, and I will never support that, regardless of when it was. In fact, I have fought hard to increase funding, and I was able to do that in 2013 and 15. That's an increase of $4.2 billion. The pre-K program, again, on education, I always tell people, what are you about? Honestly, it's education. I don't know if it's because I grew up in Fremont, and when I'd go to debate tournaments in high school, or track meets or football games, some schools had buses with tent and air conditioning. Our air conditioning was putting all the windows down on the bus. And so I saw the inequity. And so it comes from my heart. And so my first session, I filed a bill, House Bill 761, to increase funding to our pre-K program. And each session since, I have fought for it. And this last session, with the help of, honestly, Governor Abbott, but his wife, Cecilia Abbott, the First Lady of Texas, we were able to increase pre-K funding by $60 million, and we're going to increase it by more next year. Pre-K, now that I have a son that's in pre-K 3, pre-K 4 now, it's incredible how smart they are before kinder. And when I grew up in Fremont, my pre-K was at my house with my mom and my sisters. And so when I started kindergarten, I learned my alphabet, my colors in kindergarten. When you get that boost at 3 and 4 years of age, your success rate to finish high school, but to finish a bachelor's degree, are far higher. And we've also created programs in career and technical education because not everything is about getting a bachelor's degree. There are incredible jobs with 2-year certifications, vocational jobs, and I have filed many bills that did that, and we have done that. And so there's a lot more things to do next session, and I will continue to fight to increase funding for schools.
Thank you. We're going to kind of speed things up a little, but Ms. Garcia-Utley, if you have one final response.
Well, just touching back on funding our rural schools, I moved back home from the south side of Corpus Christi, where my children were at Luther Jones, and that was a great school, and we come back, to Bembolt, where I grew up, and I see, our school buildings and infrastructure falling apart. I see our band hall full of mold, where my son, who has asthma, has a hard time playing his instrument. We're down to one gym while another one is being repaired. My daughter that's in junior high cannot have her practices for volleyball, and it bothers me. Something has to be done to bring equity to all of our school districts. If this being based on our property taxes, we have these cuts coming in with the oil field, we need to develop a plan, and we need to fight for more of that funding to definitely level the playing field, because when we talked back in the day about No Child Left Behind, this puts my children, I feel, at a disadvantage. We're home where I grew up, great environment, great community, but yet our schools are suffering because of the inadequate funding that we are not getting.
Thank you. And in keeping with the theme on public education and funding, I want to kind of turn to higher education. I know the legislature this past session approved some TRBs, tuition revenue bonds, for improvements here at A&M Kingsville, along with other universities across the state. Representative, do you feel that goes far enough to help universities like A&M Kingsville that are, has growing population, is kind of bursting at the seams with less classroom space? Do you feel that goes far enough?
It's definitely a start, and for multiple sessions before I got there, the Kingsville had not got a TRB, tuition revenue bond. We all know the band, the music building here. I remember being in Fremont Junior High playing trumpet, and we'd come up here for a band camp. A band camp. Where's my sister Violet? She's probably laughing at me for saying that. And the lockers were wooden tablas, big wooden boards with a hinge screwed on. That was, and so to keep it shut, some of them had duct tape, some had a wire. That's where they put their French horn in there. And it was incredible that one of the most incredible music programs in the state of Texas, where at state marching competitions, all of the A&I, now A&M Kingsville band directors basically take a picture, because it's like a brotherhood of incredible band directors, how that music building has deteriorated. There haven't been funds, and so I fought hard to get that $65 million. They should start construction soon. And they're also going to have classroom space. And so the 4 years ago, the TRB that I proposed was for $42 million. That whole TRB failed, and this last session, we added about $23 million, and that's going to have classroom space in addition to a music building. It is just a start, though. There's a tremendous amount of infrastructure investments that we need to make at the state level, not only for our higher education infrastructure, but for our roads and our water systems. And I look forward to continuing to help in that process.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia-Utley, do you feel that the tuition revenue bonds that the legislature approved this year for improvements at various universities, do you feel that goes far enough to help these universities out?
It is a little more difficult going back to our district. I think we're in a unique position to where the students that come here come from more of an area that are economically challenged, and maybe we're still looking at first-generation college students in their families, and we need to do a little more, I believe, to help institutions like this university and colleges with state funding in order to keep the tuition at an affordable cost for these students. There's several students that feel that at this point it's more expensive to obtain a 2 or 4 year degree and get into serious debt instead of being comfortable to finish a 2 or 4 year degree program, get out into the workforce, take care of a possible 1 year debt, and continue to live a successful life and move on into the future. And that is not so right now. So I think along with helping these universities, this will really in turn help with the tuition situation for our students as well.
Great. Representative, she brought up student loans and the debt that some students leave school with. I mean, obviously, a lot of times student loans are handled on the federal level, but is there anything the legislature can do to help ease that burden on some of these individuals who have, are leaving school with massive amounts of debt?
Yeah. A few sessions ago, when I voted against education cuts, some of those education cuts also cut a program called the Texas Grants. And that's a state-funded grant program for college students, especially first-time generation college students. There are some universities that have increased tuition at rates far above inflation plus growth. And if you look at a model of before there was tuition deregulation passed, A&M Kingsville is actually below that increase, below the rate of tuition increase when it was regulated. Kingsville, A&M Kingsville just does a good job in controlling its expenses and being very efficient in its expenditures. Other universities don't. I do also have a problem with some of our students that major in Russian literature or fields that regionally you can't find work. And they graduate with a college loan, can't get a job, and I'm talking like $40,000, $50,000. And when they do get a job, the payment alone is almost a third or half of their monthly take-home pay. And so we have to emphasize engineering, STEM field, bachelor's degree programs. We have to find funding for education programs so that our teachers will come back and teach in rural areas. We have to add stipends to their pay. Most teachers graduate from education programs and they want to live in San Antonio, Houston, large cities. The pay is better. And so that's another area in terms of, and of course health, nursing, pre-med, pharmacy, physician assistant, nurse practitioner programs. These are all incredible programs that we have here that we need to encourage more kids to apply to.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia?
Going back on teacher salaries, I bring up that my parents are school teachers because I lived in a home where it was tough every month. My father had an extra job. Both my parents worked in the summers. There were no summers off. So I know how hard they worked for the amount of pay that they were paid for doing such a big job to teach the children. And right now, a teacher's salary average is about a little over 51,000. Now that's 6,300 below the national average. And I just think that there needs to be an increase in that. We continue to say teachers need to get paid more, teachers need to get paid more, but it's time that we do something to fight for our school teachers, to fight for their retirement, especially the administrators and the entire staff in an ISD that need that retirement. They put in 20, 30 years and because of these cuts lose their retirement. And to me that just hurts me because I see that happening at home as well, where we've gone into a system to where we contract several services now. Well, that just took away retirement from a big percentage of our ISD employees, and that was something that they were counting on. They have been there since I was in school there. And so I think we need to do a little more on helping our school teachers, our administration, and funding our ISDs properly in order to get the education that we want for our children.
Thank you. are cutting real close to our time limit here. So I want to kind of move forward real quick to another issue related to universities in part. Obviously, we all know about the open carry and the campus carry legislation that actually took effect this year, most recently here on campuses, where the university students who are licensed to carry concealed weapons are able to do so on campus in certain parts of the campus. Representative, in going back, and I know you supported both pieces of legislation, in going back with that, did the legislation, was it implemented the way you expected, or?
There were two things on that bill. The first thing is I have one university in my district, A&M Kingsville. And the first thing I did is I asked the chancellor of A&M, John Sharp, tell me what you think about this bill. If you're against it, I'm going to do everything I can to stop that bill. And so he was for it. And he was part of the amendment process to that bill that added an amendment that allowed the Board of Regents to basically take a map of the university and find areas on that campus where they are carved out from the law. Businesses can carve out their businesses from the law by posting a notice. This was just basically taking the current concealed handgun license law and taking the word concealed out of it so people can carry a handgun. There are still fixes to be made next session. One of the unintended consequences was at our courthouses. Not all courthouses are the same, and in rural counties like ours, more and more people use multiple entrances to go pay their registration renewal, to go get a birth certificate, and so there are multiple entrances, and so they need multiple metal detectors. Our courthouse here in Clayburgh had to shut down entrances to control that atmosphere because the courthouse is up on top, and so when people are going to court, there's high-stress situations. You don't want someone in there with a gun. And so next session, I look forward to crafting those fixes. The legislative process is such that whenever there's a bill that goes into effect, we hear from the public that tell us, hey, it was close, but you still need to do this. Or it didn't have the actual intended consequence you wanted. This is what you need to do. And that's what I intend to do next session. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia?
Going back to Mr. Lozano's voting record here, he did vote in favor of allowing guns on college campuses. Now, Mr. Lozano did say he visited with Mr. Sharp, but to me, that's just something that you have to decide as an individual. Allowing guns in our campuses, something that students feel so uncomfortable with, our professors feel uncomfortable and threatened by, it becomes more of a hostile environment instead of a peaceful learning environment. It's just something that I feel, 5-6 years of experience in legislation, that's not just something that you go get an opinion on and vote for. That is something that you need to vote for as an individual and take responsibility for. And right now, with all these shootings going on with our law enforcement in classrooms, in public places, this is just, we need to find a happy medium where, yes, guns, rifles, they're okay, but they have a place to where they belong. I'm a hunter myself, but I believe guns and rifles, there's a time and a place, and a classroom or a public setting in a church is not a place to have or display a gun at your hip. It's just not a comfortable setting. Mr. Lozano also voted to basically bring down from a Class A misdemeanor to a Class C punishment on with anyone bringing a weapon into a public place. Now, to me, that just continues to show that he is for open carry, regardless of what he was, advised on voting that. That is just something that I'm not for, and I'm not going to buy that.
Representative, response?
Yeah, I'm sure you know a Class A misdemeanor and a Class B misdemeanor. Those require jail time.
Yes.
And a Class C misdemeanor is a ticketed offense.
Correct.
And so that bill was after committee hearings with education experts testifying on what they wanted for that law. Rifles have always been permitted to be carried openly on the street. That was not affected by the handgun legislation.
Correct.
And so that's not even affected. But when I vote on bills that affect teachers, doctors, dentists, I go to the experts in that field. I couldn't possibly know every single substance matter on 6,500 bills that are filed every session. That would be wrong. I represent 165,000 people, not myself. And so I asked the experts, the A&M system for their university here, do you want this bill or not? And they told me they supported it. And I mean, there's nothing malicious. That's the democratic process. I'm not going to vote for myself.
Ms. Garcia-Utley, rebuttal?
Mr. Lozano,
The audience, please.
Mr. Lozano, you claim, putting people first, but I don't believe that that's putting people first. I believe that's putting special interest groups first.
You want me to put myself first? I can't put myself first.
Ms. Garcia-Utley, did you have any further rebuttal?
No, sir.
No? Ms. Representative Lozano?
No.
Are you good? Okay. We've gone ahead and we've reached the tail end of our discussion, but we have one audience submission that's about as much time as we have time for at this point. This question actually is for both of you. If given a chance to serve as District 43 State Representative, would you be willing to introduce a bill legalizing marijuana for recreational use, with taxes going to the schools and rainy day fund? I'll go ahead and let Ms. Garcia.
You can go with me. No, medicinal purpose is something different. Recreational use is a little different. I hear what's going on in Colorado and all the revenue coming in from cannabis use, but I think we're still a pretty conservative state, and I think the use for medicinal purposes would be where I would probably draw the line.
Okay, Representative.
I definitely. One of the things I don't want is to see kids locked up and have their careers ruined because they were pulled over with a joint in their pocket. Kids today are making mistakes that that they're allowed to make because they haven't fully developed as adults. I don't want to see, and so I support decriminalizing that small quantity so that we don't put them in jail and we don't crowd our jails and add that added financial burden to our cities and counties. On the medicinal purposes, I have seen firsthand children with seizures have seizures go from 90 per day to 4 per day with cannabis oil. And so last session I was part of a group that helped put that in the research hospital setting. And I also passed a law last session that increased the punishment for synthetic marijuana, which is not marijuana. It is potpourri sprayed with all kinds of chemicals. And these offenders were getting away from prosecution by changing one compound. The DAs came to my office and said, we need to make sure we can prosecute them because they're hindering prosecution. We passed that law, and that use has gone down. And I also passed laws to add court programs, rehabilitation programs, to help our youth fight addiction. It is an illness. And so we need to continue that good work.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and give both candidates a chance to offer some closing statements. So, Representative, if you'd like to go ahead and offer a closing statement to the audience, you're welcome to do so.
Again,
Apologies, this is all the time that we had set aside for these particular issues.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk after, because that's Hazelwood especially. With Kingsville Naval Air Station here, I've met a lot of military veterans that have told me about their dependents they were planning on their dependents going to college. They enlisted in the military because of Hazelwood, and then now it's taken out from under their feet. And so that's an issue that I definitely want to talk with you about fighting for. It's been an honor to serve almost 6 years now, and we've done a lot of good. And I want to continue that good work for you. We also have to be very protective of our children and our communities. We also have to fight urban versus rural fights all the time. For a while, it seemed like everything was going as far south as San Antonio and then nothing for South Texas. In fact, many people probably thought, hey, there's nothing south of San Antonio. Well, we've put South Texas on the map with Irma Rangel serving 25 years in the legislature, bringing a pharmacy school here that's named for her. I added legislation to ensure that that pharmacy school will never leave Kingsville, Texas. And I'll continue to fight for more funding for the A&M Pharmacy School. We also have to protect ourselves. I'm chairman of redistricting right now. There's always efforts to put Clayburgh County with Nueces County in a district. Clayburgh County, Jim Wells, B, San Patricio will never be able to elect their own representative if it's paired with Nueces County. And we all have communities of interest, and we also have competing interests when Nueces County, another university, another Navy base. And so I have fought those efforts as well. We have to, I need your help to get back to Austin and continue to protect you. I fight from the heart. No matter what, I always vote the people. And I want to thank you for helping me fight for you.
Thank you. Ms. Garcia-Utley, if you'd like to offer a closing statement.
Sure. Well, I too want to thank you for this opportunity. Of course, this was my first forum debate ever, so thank you for the opportunity of experiencing that. I know that Mr. Lozano, has brought some things to our district. He has served the district for 6 years, and wants to continue to do that. I, on the other hand, feel that as a state representative, our job is to be the voice of our constituents. And in order to be the voice of our constituents, we have to empathize with them. And in order to empathize with them, we have to have walked in their shoes and gone through the struggles that they've gone through. Something that was brought to me, by someone that is very close to Mr. Lozano after I filed was a phone call that told me that I didn't have the money it took to run for this position. And I said that I appreciated what he had to say, but I don't believe that it takes money to run this position. I believe it takes, like I said, empathy. I believe it takes experience. I believe it takes someone who has fallen and gets back up and continues to fight and does not give up on the people that elect them. I will continue to fight for those that are underprivileged, underserved. We have about 73% of the families or individuals that make $50,000 or less in our district. And I can fit into that 73%. Those are the people that I want to help. Those are the people that I'm here fighting for. This has not been an easy campaign. There has been one thing coming at me and another, but I continue to fight, and I will not give up till November 8th. I thank you for your support, for your time. I thank Mr. Lozano for being here and agreeing to come out and talk to all of you and even answer questions, although we didn't get to answer much. I thank the Record for putting this on, our families for being out here, my parents, and all those who are here, and my fiance. And I just ask for your support, your vote. I do not have the 6 years experience, but I do have the determination, the fight, and the will to do what's best for District 43. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for our candidates once more.